Oh, that's a good idea. I wish I could do that, hop over. Well, I like that. That's cute. That's cool. Never mind. It's cool. Okay. We're ready, and I'm so excited today. You have no idea. I have to stay calm. All right. I'm not going to make big talks. Oh, yes, I received a memo about absences. It seems parents are wondering when their students, their children are absent, what's happening. So you're allowed, as you know, I will repeat it only this time, 2 absences. And if you are absent, you must bring a note. If it's from a doctor or a valid excuse, you have to let me know why you were absent. There's a very important issue which we won't go into now. But please, no more than 2 absences. If you do, your absence will be questioned. You have to present me with a valid note from a doctor or whatever the reason is. That's the end of that discussion. And no cell phones and no eating or drinking. That's the end of that. And I'm just anxious to have you meet Mr. McComb, who's here, and I'm just thrilled, yes. He's been at Liz Claiborne as the CEO for the last 15 months. That means a year and 3 months, if my math is correct. And he has turned that company inside out, but the right way, because we were discussing it. He's tuned into what's happening, and this is something he will talk about to you. And as you know, Liz Claiborne is the corporate. Liz Claiborne has Juicy Couture, Kate Spade, Mex, and they did have Dana Buckman and Ellen Tracy, and he will talk about the plan and what he foresees and what he feels as the fashion and marketing, merchandising future, which is very important for you. When you get out of here, you have to be very aware of where you're headed, what your direction is, and what you have to be motivated by that. Okay, enough of my talk. And as you know, Tim Gunn was someone Mr. McComb engaged right away, which I think brings excitement. He was, as you know, at our competitive school, Parsons. He was a dean there. And Isaac Mizrahi, which I think is a great creative talent and stimulating. And I'm not going to say any more, I think. And as you know, one of the nice things I loved, that he's born in Ohio?
Missouri.
What?
I was born in Missouri.
Oh, Missouri.
I was raised in Indiana.
Oh, well, I like Missouri. Okay, you'll tell them. Come up here and tell them. And he's a graduate of the University of Chicago, and I was confused, the Miami University of Ohio?
That's correct.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Got a little bit of all those Midwestern states going.
Okay. Mr. Bill McComb, come and get me off the stage, because I'm too nervous to talk. And these are...
Thank you.
And there's some water.
Sure. I'll go ahead and crack that open. Hi. How are you guys? So there are 1,000 things we could talk about. Obviously, the fun thing to talk about is you guys. And I'll do that by also talking about our company and what you're reading in the press and where we're going. And then I'll relay it back to you and what it means for you pursuing a career in this industry. I'm a newbie to the industry, sort of. My first job out of college was at Lazarus Department Store, which was like Macy's. In fact, it's owned by Macy's now. The very store I worked in says Macy's on the outside. But that was a chain out of Columbus, Ohio. And I went into their manager and training program, which are, these great old, training programs that just don't exist anymore. And it taught me how to be a merchant. My first job, I was in charge of the luggage department, and I blew the luggage out, so they gave me men's, women's, and kids' shoes in their biggest store. And I did it before I went to business school. And when I went to business school, University of Chicago MBA, I came out with a finance and marketing degree and went down the path of advertising and consumer products. And I ended up at Johnson & Johnson, where I had a very unexpected career that started out literally selling skincare, marketing, brand management, and skincare, and I ended up into deep into the healthcare side of their business, life sciences, surgical products, pharmaceuticals, but the most of my career has been in consumer-based businesses, starting with that job as a merchant, then all the way through being a brand manager and running their largest consumer products company, the Tylenol company. And I made this move just over a year ago because I wanted to get out of heavily regulated industries and back to an industry that was fast-moving and consumer-rooted with an element of retail as well. And so I came to the Liz Claiborne Company, and I came at a time of significant change in the company. Liz Claiborne, right down the street at 575 7th, or also known as 1441 Broadway, is a company that has morphed many times in its 30-plus year history. And when I say it's morphed, it is one of the great success stories of an entrepreneur, a group of 4 entrepreneurs starting their own business, all 4 after their 50th birthday. Okay? And the business just shot to the moon. You probably don't know the story, but the story is that it was a cover of Fortune and Forbes and Businessweek magazines. It had one of the fastest climbs from 0 to $1 billion in the history of the industry. But the company's changed over time. And one thing you'll learn about business and companies is there's an interesting statistic. Of the companies that were on the list of the Forbes top 100 companies in 1917, only about 20 of them even existed by 1987. And I'm telling you that statistic to say that if companies don't impose significant change on themselves, they just go away. They cease to exist. Our company has been a company that in its history has had chapters of revitalization. And we're in the midst of one of those chapters right now. And in the past, we went from being the company that was just the Liz Claiborne brand to almost pioneering the model of line extending. And we went from Liz Claiborne to a company that also had other labels like Liz & Co. And Liz Sport, and carved out multiple space with different lifestyle ideas on the department store floor. The brand, Liz herself, was a pioneer in a number of areas. She was the first one to really create lifestyle assortment. Back then, in the dark ages of the late 70s, mid 70s, if you went into a department store, suit jackets were all put in one part of the store. Pants in another, skirts in another, and each classification of what would now be considered a collection were separated. And the Liz Claiborne brand was one of the first forces in department stores to bring them together and to assort under one label for the consumer. And that was a great thing. In time, the company faced challenges and it needed to innovate, and beginning with the former CEO's tenure in the early 90s, we made the decision as a corporation to become a portfolio company, a company that had multiple brands under management of one roof. And we blossomed and burgeoned to the point where when I came on board, we had 48 different labels. I won't say brands, but labels. And we got to the point where we were by expanding through acquisition, we were taking on a bit more than we could chew. But something else was beginning to happen in our company. In order to manage the complexity, and if I could even call it chaos, of all those labels, with all of the channel dynamics we had happening, we lost sight of the most important element of this industry and this business. And that's the creative energy, the creative center, the design and merchandising side of the business. We became a company like the IBM of this industry, but that's not what got us to where we were. And I made the decision a year ago after talking to our associates at all levels, most importantly our design and merchant community, that we had to get very serious about product. And the only way we were going to get serious about product was to focus our resources. At the same time, we studied all the brands in the industry for 10 to 15 years and concluded that the companies that had the most enviable track record of creating value for shareholders were companies that were structured and culturally obsessed with brand power, brands. And so we said two things. We had to be a company that reasserted its creative muscle, the muscle for its design and merchandising strength, and a company that was literally built around harnessing the power of a great brand. And that we needed to put more deposits in the brand equity account than take withdrawals. And you take a brand like the Liz Claiborne brand, I can honestly stand here and say that while its heritage is up here and the regard that the average consumer has is up here, the consumer's rating of the brand with its product now is down here. It's a tarnished brand. And we've done the research to say, can we bring the brand back? I don't mean take it up to compete with high-level luxury brands, but in the space that it competes in, reassert the power that that brand has latently. And we did a lot of research with consumers, not so many here in the island of Manhattan, but just over the bridge and out to Toledo and out to California and down south, and we determined that we could, but that it would take, again, almost a nuclear bomb to go off in the middle of it to get consumers to reconsider the brand. And so what we've done as a company is we said the first thing that we had to do was shed off some of the brands that didn't have the same potential. We couldn't treat everything with sort of the value of one, allocate resources evenly across these things. And we had to sweep away some of the brands that in other people's hands would prosper. Almost all of our brands had great potential. There was only one that we really discontinued. We shut it down. And that wasn't because it didn't have great potential. It was the Sigrid Olsen brand. It was because what it was going to take to get that going again was going to be more than the money that we had in our pockets. But we said we would narrow our portfolio and reorganize our company and be very design-centric, and we would focus on the brands. And so what you've read in the press is that, in fact, we eliminated 14 businesses from our collection, and we've restructured the company, and we've put all the people that work on a given brand under one structure. It used to be in our old structure, I'll take Juicy Couture, there were actually 9 presidents that worked on that business and 3 group presidents, and never did they meet. Never was there a design meeting. The licensed product was never checked by a master designer, and that's a big change that we've made in the last year. So we're now at a point where what we are pursuing as a company is we're all about generating incredibly strong lifestyle brands. And a lifestyle brand is a brand that competes across product categories, across geographies, and is available in the channels that the consumer wants to buy it. As an e-tailer, as a retailer, as a wholesaler. And that's the direction that the company's headed. It's a massive change in culture, but one that once the dust settles, I think there will be tremendous clarity putting the power back on the creative engine. One of the other elements the company was famed for years and years ago was our corporation pioneered the business model of sourcing from Asia. We were the first ones to set up large-scale manufacturing partnerships in China in the late 70s and early 80s. And we're in the process now of some sweeping changes in how we go to market with our sourcing partners. We built one of the largest centrally controlled sourcing teams in the industry. Today we're saying we can't be brand-centric and design and merchandising focused with a separate sourcing group. So we're in the process of decentralizing the sourcing function to be down in those groups. Now, what does this say about you? I'm saying all of that as sort of background to the conversation about you and your career. The one thing that I find so interesting, being a new guy to this industry, is how multifaceted any of the jobs in these companies are. If you're a designer, you also have to be a great salesperson, you have to be a great merchant, you have to be a market researcher, you better know sourcing, you're going to be expected to be financially astute because you're going to have to engineer your gross margin from a design perspective, and you could flip any one of those functions and say the same about the other. Maybe if you're in sourcing, you don't have to be a great designer, but I actually think you do. To be a great partner to a designer, if you're in sourcing, you actually need to have incredible appreciation for the design process and the design elements, technical design and creative design as well. So it's an industry that, in spite of years and years and years of change, and it's getting tougher and more competitive to break through and be successful as a new start. And yet it's an industry, oddly enough, where at any given time a newbie can come along and disrupt an old guard company. The things that just don't seem to be changing, in my view, are the cross-functional requirement that's on you, the executive in the company. And the other thing that I'll tell you is, for all the changes that we're going through in our company now, and we're very proud of them. Sometimes the press can cast it as an ugly mess down the street. I think we would say we're proud to take on the change because we're addressing our future. It's much tougher to be in a company where things aren't going well and nobody's addressing it. But I'll tell you, we'll go through it again. And we'll go through it again. The challenge in running these companies, especially in this kind of an industry, is to stay attuned to what's changing. And what's changing in the channels. Channel partners that are leaders today may not be leaders tomorrow. The whole idea right now of the success of the middle of the mall, the specialty retailer, in 10 years that may not be the case. The economics of rent are changing day by day, and it's getting tougher and tougher to let the good locations actually pay the kind of profit that shareholders need. And so, I guess that's some background to tee you up for questions and conversation, to let you lead the dialogue. This is, I would tell you, you're braced for, if you're going into the industry, you're braced for an industry that you will have the opportunity and at the same time be forced not only to reinvent yourself, but to participate in revolution and to participate in change. And you've got to stay on top of that. And what's exciting about it is that some industries don't work that way. Some industries just don't afford the multifaceted nature of the role that you can take on. So let's see if you guys have any questions, if you want to steer the conversation anywhere. Yeah?
Well, I'm a fashion design major, and this summer I was offered an internship, but it's this advertising company. But I'd be working like 5 feet away from the designer, so I'm gonna do it, and I'd be working like laying out and like advertising fashion, like jewelry and maybe clothes. I don't know, but
so it's an advertising.
It's a good idea, even though I'm working like maybe I get to choose like which team I'm gonna work with, like Vera Wayne,
I see,
or Donna Karen or whatever.
Let me tell you about internships. Internships are all about you learning more about you. And so, really, it's don't overstudy what the job or the role is. Study the learning environment, because you're trying to collect data points about yourself. You're trying to get informed on what it is that you love, what it is that you hate. There's absolutely no way to know at the stage that you're in really what your sweet spot is going to be career-wise. We all guess, and fortunately, we all figure it out over time. But for some people, that means more disruptive change year on year than for other people. It sounds like a great internship, first of all, because
I went there, and it's a beautiful work environment.
So it's a fashion company, and you'll be working in the advertising group?
They have like
oh yeah, sure. Laird & Partners is Juicy Couture's advertising agency.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a fantastic.
When I was 15 and I
Yeah. Fantastic agency. They specialize in fashion advertising, as you said. So whether it's Donna's business, the Juicy business, the Vera business, there are many clients. You'll be in a business where you're actually, the product or the business is advertising, but it's a creative environment, and you know what? It sounds like you'd learn a lot. Yeah. You also, find your passion and success will find you. That's advice that I give people. You know, a lot of times people in your position try to figure out what's the job that's going to pay a lot of money? What's the job that's going to look good on paper or sound good? And that's a surefire way to find yourself into a position that you may not actually succeed in. If you are loving what you're doing, you'll give it your all, and it will show, and your possibility for success will be higher. So I actually say you have to listen to your heart more than your head when it comes to making important career decisions. And that's in terms of the company, the role, and you got to be willing when you start in your first job to let it be an exploration, because you may find that you put yourself on the wrong track in a company. We've had people that have come in to be designers that really are merchants, or people that are better at sourcing than at merchandising, or, believe it or not, people that are better in finance than in merchandising. And again, that's the good thing about this industry. It seems to be a very forgiving industry. It seems to be an industry where take any 10 people that work in my company and ask them their history, and it tends to be quite a diverse story. And that's not true in the rest of the corporate world, where you can get pigeonholed and niched. It's hard to sort of break away against different tracks.
I'm curious, you were registered in this class?
Me? Oh, yes.
I'm so proud.
There's a question.
What do you think are the most important qualities you need to be like a successful planner or merchandiser?
The most important qualities to be a great planner or merchandiser. I think to be in any of these companies, from design, merchandising, and sourcing, I think you have to have great antenna for the consumer. And so I think that you need to have a certain dirt under the fingernail, a good gut on you about where the consumer's going and what the consumer wants. I think to be a great planner or merchandiser, you have to have a true facility with data and information, and you know, you need to be, it's a right and left brain orientation that you need to have. Because inventory management that is a decidedly analytical discipline, but also being able to synthesize where the trends are, either that you see in concrete terms in terms of a report, or that you're sensing by being out at retail and you're seeing what's moving, listening, being a great listener, and extracting from people that are at retail what's moving and what's not. In some ways, it's you need the great crystal ball, and that I'll say, you know, being a great synthesizer of trends that you're seeing and trends that you're sensing, and being able to convert them into action orientation is key. I think you have to have a great sense of urgency if you're a planner and merchant, because I think that it's an act now world and environment, and I think you need to be, I'll say this about any job description in the value chain of fashion, I think you need to be a great salesperson. I think that you have a point of view about what needs to be focused and built into your line, and you need to be able to sell the people on the total team that that's what needs to go. So I always say to yourself, don't kid yourself. Unless you're going to sit in your own apartment and write and, you know, very quietly blog for a career, you need to be a great salesperson. Brace yourself. Those that are successful in organizations, in any function, know how to sell their ideas through engaging interpersonal skills. Sure.
You said that you decided to keep Liz Claiborne decided to keep certain brands over others. Why did you choose to keep Kate Spade? And the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm currently interning at Kate Spade in the planning department. So
Good, excellent. That's very good. And we're really building quite a planning function at Kate Spade. Kate Spade is our newest business. So it wasn't even a decision to keep it or not. We just bought it. It's the last business. I walked in the door on Monday, November 6th, and at 10 o'clock that morning, the company announced, not me, I just inherited it, and it was the greatest thing in the world to inherit, that we were buying Kate Spade. I've made the decision that it will be one of our top 3 focus brands. unlike the Liz Claiborne business, which, by the way, we've announced the affiliation with Isaac Mizrahi, who's bigger than life and will be that neutron bomb or atomic bomb that will absolutely blast America's attitudes away and reconnect with I mean, he's a true artiste and design maestro, and he will coordinate everything for that brand. Kate Spade, I call Sleeping Beauty. It was not a tarnished brand, but it's a brand that, because it was so quietly and entrepreneurially managed by Kate and Andy through the roaring heyday of accessories from 1995 till 2008, when Coach went from 40 million in sales to 2.5 billion in sales. Kate Spade at a time was a bigger brand than Coach, and it certainly was the more on-trend new thing to have. But Kate and Andy, husband and wife, entrepreneurs in the business, they didn't want a big business. They loved having it small, and they were incredible how they managed it. But it remained very tiny. We believe that the creative, whimsical sensibility of that brand stands for will be a huge growth engine for us in accessories over the next 10 years, and that the era of accessories has only just begun. It isn't over. It isn't peaked. But you will find that there'll be 10-year chapters where companies really play the marquee, and we think Kate can do it with its strong emphasis on color, what we think we can do with jewelry, what we plan to do with selective apparel items, not collection. And it's already doing unbelievably in footwear as well. So the answer to your question is, the consumer, that brand was, I call it Sleeping Beauty because it didn't participate in the aggressive growth of accessories, but it is still regarded by the consumer as a gem. And so I hired the woman that has been running Banana Republic design and creative for the last 5 years, and prior to that she worked for Rosemary Bravo in leading women's sportswear design at Burberry. A woman out of RCA in London, brilliant person, Deborah Lloyd, and most recently hired a COO partner for her, Craig Levitt, who was 16 years at Ralph Lauren Polo, was at Diesel, a real brand guy, and the two of them are going to co-lead that business. But we believe that business has $1 billion potential in it over the next 6 to 7 years.
What are your top brands? What would you consider your top?
Well, our largest brand is Mex, which is a brand you probably know little about. It had a couple stores in the U.S., but it's not a U.S. brand. It's based in Amsterdam. It's $1.3 billion in sales. It's in 39 countries. We have 250 of our own retail stores. It's might be the number 2 brand in Russia right now. And it's great for us because we're a very U.S.-centric company, but to have a third of our revenue, or just under a third, come from a brand that's truly a European company is a fantastic learning platform for us. Juicy is just over $600 million in sales, and we announced 2 weeks ago it grew 49% last year. And it's comping at same-store sales growth in the middle of the worst recession we've seen in this country in decades at plus 25%. Runaway growth. It's so not about the tracksuit anymore. When you see where the brand is going, it's fashion and accessories are great. Lucky brand, $500 million brand, 150 of our own retail stores. Significantly less wholesale distribution than we had in the past. A great American denim-based brand with a potential to be much, much bigger in an era where, pardon me, Gap, as the corner jean store with 1,000 stores, is truly recoiling and shrinking. We think that there's really an opportunity for Lucky, while not trying to get to 1,000 stores, but expanding its niche in terms of its product. Right now, our stores have a very California skew. Very little outerwear, very little knitwear in the middle of winter, nothing in footwear, and yet the Lucky brand certainly has a sensibility that lends itself well there. Lucky brand jewelry is the fastest growing brand of jewelry at Macy's, and yet we didn't even have it in our own stores. So I will tell you that there's a vision for Lucky, that Lucky could push the $1 billion mark. we certainly were holding it back structurally and organizationally by not managing that team centrally to say, as a brand, what are all the things that they want to do. DKNY Jeans, we just expanded our license a week ago to now have a men's better sportswear launch. We're the licensee of that brand, and it's one of the fastest growing brands at Macy's. And we get it right. We manage it in a separate location. The team, they don't know where they work. They just know that they're all about DKNY. That's the environment we're creating for each of our brands.
Isn't DKNY doing a special line with Great Salesperson?
Yeah, that's our group.
Okay.
Yep. So we have a celebrity guest lines that are coming in and out.
Come to you, or did you go to her?
We went to them in all those cases. And again, that's a team that they just get the marketing side of the business so that they understand what their consumer wants, and their consumer wants fresh, new ideas, new thinking.
How is your company as a whole facing the whole problem with accessories just being way more important than clothing?
Our company, about 7 years ago, built its own accessories, I call it complex. I think it was a mistake, but it was a mistake in that it was a centralized group. So we literally did accessories for any brand out of this group. The good news is we got really good at it. We got control of the channel, and from a sourcing and supply chain perspective, very, very good at sourcing jewelry, at sourcing handbags. But I didn't like the connection between that the designers of accessories were on an island and not woven into the brand. We did it right at Juicy. Juicy Accessories was, although it was managed in that separate center, the founders of Juicy, Pam and Gila, they asserted their control over design. I think that the bottom line answer to your question now is that over time we've really built a capability, and so it's not something that we have that's a surprise move. I think 40% of our overall sales in 2006 came from accessories. So that, plus the fact that we're focusing now on Kate Spade too, helps. Next, though, accessories is 10% of the business. Big miss, because in Europe, accessories are like they are here. So we're actually building a big accessories team in Amsterdam right now.
Did you cut back in your 14 businesses? Did you cut back in all areas, or did you focus more people into design, or were there?
Well, what we did was we literally got rid of 14 businesses. So we either sold them or licensed them. And then what we've been doing on the businesses that we said we're going to focus on, we've absolutely, we reorganized the teams and have added more to design. We've created a better hierarchy, if you can use that word, much more cross-functional teaming, okay? And very importantly, we've upped our marketing budgets. We weren't spending money on marketing on our businesses. We're investing money in marketing now. And on Kate Spade, Lucky Brand Jeans, and Juicy Couture, and Mex, we're aggressively opening retail stores. And so it's an area that we're building all of the capabilities that are needed in planning and allocation as a perfect example, and inventory management, to retail-based distribution. We're building capabilities to run a very large owned retail organization. So this year we'll open 23 Kate Spade stores, we'll open another 27 Juicy stores, and another 25 Lucky stores, and probably about 20 Mex stores. And so we put a lot of money and time and energy into that element of it too.
Do you plan on bringing Max to the United States?
No, I took it out of the United States. It was on 52nd and 5th Avenue, and I closed that store in my second month. The reason was that we never established it here. You can't open a store on 5th Avenue or on M Street in Georgetown, which is where Mex was, and on West Broadway or Broadway, and not put marketing dollars to drive traffic. The reality is, you can't just put a sign on a door. You actually have to make, if it's a lifestyle brand, you actually have to generate demand. A much more logical way to enter the United States would have been through a partner like Nordstrom and build wholesale distribution. Lucky brand was 100% wholesale 7 years ago. And now it's probably 30% wholesale and 70 retail with 150 of our own stores. So the mistake was build it and they will come. And we built it and they didn't come. And it just goes back to the fact that that's how we were resourcing everything. We didn't have enough money to do 150 things, but we tried to do 150 things anyway. So now we're channeling our money so we can have bigger impact. I wouldn't come to it's very easy to be an ugly American. The truth is, there's more volume and growth potential in Eastern Europe for Mex than there would be here. I'd have to spend 5 times the money to establish Mex here than to just keep rolling east, where the brand has recognition and traction, and a sensibility that's aligned with the fashion aesthetic in those markets rather than here. And even though Mex is changing, we're repositioning the brand this August, and I think it's going to be really exciting. I won't call it, it's sort of a Euro Banana Republic. It's cleaner, it's more effortless, it's contemporary and reflects the diversity of European culture. It's neat, and you'll see it in the, well, you won't see it because it's over there, in the marketing and in the product execution. Well, you know, that's a very old-fashioned question, because in the old days, people used to shop in channels. Now people don't shop in channels. There is a higher coincidence of shopping between Neiman Marcus, Costco, and Target than there is Macy's and Dillard's. So the answer to your question is, interestingly, that woman that shops at Macy's is also in Target quite a bit. And we researched whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, and it was a great thing, because our consumer thinks that Target is hipper and cooler for design than Macy's. And so who would have thought 5 years ago or 10 years ago that we would take a designer? The funny thing about Isaac was he was always a couture designer, a real New York vetted designer that was doing something in Target. And I think the consumer knew that that was a discontinuity. Like, I can get Isaac Mizrahi here. It's not unexpected now that he's stepping out of that environment and going into a regular department store. The key will be, we are going to completely change the way we've ever marketed that brand, and it will have a very strong marketing influence from him. And he will be very personally involved. His image, his name in the label and in the marketing of the brand. It's a full stop relaunch of the Liz Claiborne core brand, which we need. It's about, 10 years late? Our employees begged us to do something big, and that's about as big as it gets. Who are we targeting with the Liz line? It's the woman that ought to be buying. Yeah, that's with the Liz line. That's okay. Yeah. It's the woman who should be buying it right now. It's targeted for a missy fit in what it should be, in our industry language, we call the better price zone. So we've made the brand far more moderate in pricing than we should. Okay? But it's distributed at Macy's. So we're talking about the department store consumer, largely 35 to 54 in age. And so the fit profile has to reflect that. It's a brand that has largely been traditional, but with a modern flair. And Isaac will bring even more modernity to that traditional look and fit. Bold use of color, bold accessories. Yeah, we're still working out how that reads on the label. Okay, I don't know that it'll read just like that, but a very clear locking of the two.
You said a junior fit for 35 to 50?
No, missy fit. Missy fit. What's that?
But a missy fit is kind of a 20-something.
That's not how we think about it. I mean, definitely not a junior fit. Definitely not. Yeah. No, we think of that Missy as yeah, I mean, you know what's happening? The boomer woman is most marked not by age, but by an invincibility of attitude. She's a woman that at every stage of her life said, I love my mother, but I don't ever want to be her. Okay? And she finds herself highly discontented with what's available at Ann Taylor, at Talbot's, from Jones, from Liz Claiborne, from a fit perspective. As she moves into her 40s, especially her mid-40s, our brand was always great at fit, and it had a boldness. It was a brand that was about instilling confidence, and it hasn't been reflected in our product for several years. And we've tried different kinds of things. You know, when you lose your way, when you lose your direction, you end up flip-flopping and trying all these things. The latest rendition, we tried a very refined look that it was like we were trying to take the brand up, and that's not the goal. I mean, if you look at what Isaac did at Target, it really worked. It was fashion, value-engineered fashion that was fun, that was affordable, that you'd buy now, for now. It wasn't lumbering collections that were tied to seasonal shipments, and that's a big part of what we're aspiring to do.
What about, like the Liz customer, I would say she's probably getting into her 60s, and then in 10 years she'll be in her 70s, like she's older now, like from what she used to be.
You'd be surprised. I mean, you're right, there certainly is a strong core, but in the heartland of America, there are a lot of 35-year-old women that still use that brand and want to use that brand as a fashion resource. So our targeting with Isaac, this isn't about chasing her to the grave. In fact, that's what we felt like we were doing on Ellen Tracy. We felt like, I mean, I had a designer once say, every time they heard an ambulance, they said, oh my God, that's another one of our customers. And that's not the goal of doing something like Isaac. What we want to do with Isaac is be able to bring it down, not into the 20s, that's not realistic, but to serve that mom, minivan driving, soccer mom, in the heartland of America, like in Paramus, I'm talking about, the brand needs to feel like she's splurging on herself without blowing all the money that she's got in disposable income. So it should definitely down-age the brand a bit, but you'd be surprised at its development, age-wise, in the 30s. I was very surprised by the data, but it could be a lot better.
All the focus on bodies that would fit for a 30-year-old, 35-year-old woman, or 40-year-old woman to change for the way you business.
Will it say it again? Will it change?
Yeah, does it change? Do you guys agree value that?
Yeah. Definitely.
Who are 35 or 38 look better than maybe I do, right now.
Well, you've been hanging around New York too long. No, what I would tell you, the two big mega trends that I personally am trying to drive through our corporate merchandising department to impact our designers and merchants is, in fact, fit and segmenting it and being able to create a contemporary look, okay, in a fit profile that a 45-year-old woman has to have. And secondly, weather. It's just ridiculous, the season cycle that this industry is on and that nobody's changed. That we front load season shipments in the first month of a season, and we're talking about shipping fall in July. And I'm talking about heavy wools, the fabric weights are wrong, the colors are wrong, and we put it out there as if today's American woman takes and saves up her money and in August goes out and buys a season's worth of clothes. That's not what she does. And it's all wrong. Those goods end up being completely marked down to nothing when she's ready to buy in October. And the weather has only pushed it. I actually had Ann Cashel. You'll see her on 2020, I want to say in a week. Our chief corporate merchant, we actually brought a weather forecaster and climatologist in to study 15 years worth of weather trends at the peak of each season over time. And the conclusion was just what you know. It's gotten warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer at each point, and it has not deviated. And yet, our business model, which is the industry's business model, continues to perpetuate this crazy front loading of goods. So, you know, the merchants have said they want spring on the floor in December. Well, the consumer doesn't, okay? And they want fall on the floor in July. And that's how the industry has marked all the price down and taken all the profit out and not really met the consumer need. That's not what anthropology is doing. That's not what the great vertical retailers are doing. So we've got to change that. So those are the two things that we are really focused on. But it's changing the structure of the industry, because the whole industry is supporting this and demanding it. Fit and weather. Seasonality, I should call it.
So we'll have to wait longer for stuff to go on sale now?
Well, you know what? What I would tell you is, if our industry had it right, it would never go on sale. You know, if you study the Zara model, have you studied Inditex at all? It's a Spanish company have you studied it? Okay, or H&M. You know, their business model is to run out of stock on everything. In, out, full price, gone. Be there or aloha. And, I mean, the wholesale model just isn't that way. Now, in our retail stores, we aren't fast fashion companies, so we still have long fashion cycles. But I can tell you, our full price check-throughs on Juicy are over 80%. So, hopefully you can't buy on sale anymore. You'll have to go down channel for that. How are we on time? I guess we have another minute, right? One more comment, question?
Do you see any of the emerging markets as potential for any of your brands?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We're really interested with both Mex and Liz Claiborne in India and in China. And we're tapping the middle class right now to understand what those opportunities are. The problem that you have in both of those markets are there's a total lack of infrastructure to support the middle class. Here, our company and our industry took off with the building of the American mall system. And right now, they're building a lot of malls in India, I'm not joking, without roadways to get to the malls. And in China, there's, you know, the eastern shore is extremely well developed on the high end, but the middle level not so much. And so we're looking at what American Apparel is doing and what some other very novel innovators are doing channel-wise. And we definitely, there are partners in each market that have an interest in both of those brands. I think that we're probably 2 years away from putting resources against that. Well, thank you for your time, you all. Good luck.
Now that's what I call a lot of food for thought, right? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good luck. Enjoy later.
I will.
You're great.
see what would happen to this material. And lo and behold, it fell apart. So this clearly wasn't, the same situation as we had been seeing in the beginning. The material that we first saw, we were disclosing it as being significantly clarity enhanced because that really described what was happening. And we had some comments explaining what that meant in this particular case on the report. But now we get to this material, it's not clarity enhanced anymore, it's worse than that. And so, after some discussion, we decided to change our comment for this kind of material. Now we say it's ruby with glass. So the actual variety conclusion line says it's ruby and glass. It's not just ruby that's had some liquid anymore, it's both. But that's not the end of it, of course. This, if you can, I don't know if you can see this section right here. This section is disassociated pieces of ruby that are actually floating in a glass matrix. It's a little more coherent over here, but right here, these are just pieces that are floating in glass. And this didn't start out being the same piece of material, so this is a composite. So this material we're now calling a ruby glass composite. And that's about as bad as it's gotten so far. I'm not quite sure how far or where it could go from there. So this stuff is pervasive on the market. We see it everywhere. It comes in the lab all the time. So the public, unfortunately, is buying it on the internet all the time, and so that doesn't help anything. Now, the next thing I want to speak about is beryllium treatment, because certainly if you're looking for new sources of these kind of materials, you have to be aware that this material is out there on the market in large quantities. The treatment takes off-color transparent material and transforms it into more usable, attractive colors. It doesn't clarity enhance it in any way, but it can certainly take material that was unusable before because it didn't have a good color, it could not be heat treated by normal means, to fix that color and makes it usable material. Now this treatment has been around since about 2002 and has caused really a large stir within the corundum trade. And we have found through experimentation that over time there's no color of corundum that cannot be affected by this treatment. And this is an example. These are all beryllium treated, every one of them. And depending on what they started out as, depends on what the beryllium did to them. If you're not familiar with what beryllium treatment is, basically it's introducing beryllium into the environment that corundum is heat treated in, and then the corundum is heat treated at extremely high temperatures, 1800 degrees or more. And basically the beryllium atoms diffuse into the structure of the sapphire, and in so doing, react with the constituent elements of the sapphire and change the color of the stone. It is a durable treatment, it is a permanent treatment. So those are some good things about it, but it certainly is a treatment that has to be disclosed for what it is because there's nothing natural about it. You can see it does make quite attractive stones, very bright colors. It can look very interesting in jewelry. And this is kind of what you get from this treatment. This is one of the first problems we had when it first came out. We were using pink sapphire and creating hot garage-like colors all the way up to orange. So these are all treated, and depending on how much beryllium you put into it, is depending on how And by using the beryllium treatment, you can remove a lot of that blue and lighten it up significantly. It does something entirely different in blue sapphire. It makes it less colored than it was before, rather than adding color. And all of these stones have been treated with beryllium. We didn't see them before, so we can only assume that they were darker, because that's what the treatment does to them. But the advent of this, what this may happen in the lab, these are not simple to identify. There's no easy way to do it. There's indications of the inclusions, but most of them are just indications. So what we have to do in the lab now is every corundum that comes through that's seen high temperature heat treatment, we have to run through very sophisticated chemical analysis to look for beryllium. So every stone that comes through the seen heat treatment, we have to test that way. That's the only way we can be sure to catch it. Now, corundum can be treated by many other means, but we don't have time to go through all of them. I wanted to move on to blue topaz and the issue that obviously everybody that deals with blue topaz has been concerned about over the last number of months. The thing about it is, gemologically, there's not much to say about it. I mean, really, it's all irradiated. The natural material is very rare, and we can't separate it anyway. So it almost doesn't matter that there might be some natural material out there. But the government's decided to enforce laws that have been on the books for years. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but more than 15 years ago, GI set up a facility to do just this, to test this kind of material, to test for radiation and to certify whether or not topaz or any other gem was radioactive. We had all the licenses, we had all the equipment, but the problem was nobody was interested at the time, including the government. And so nobody wanted anything tested. So unfortunately, about 2 years ago, this facility was dismantled. And, as fate would have it, the very next year, it becomes a big issue. We knew that was going to happen. But there's no going back, I'm afraid. The equipment is gone, the licenses are gone, so we have to start from scratch to set it up again. So, blue topaz, as you know, blue topaz will now have to be tested and certified as non-radioactive. Facilities have to be set up, which means there's more cost, there's more paperwork. According to a Colorstone magazine article recently, 3 such facilities are already up and operational and testing several 100,000 carats of stones per day now. So it is being taken care of. It will take some time. There'll be issues. Mounted stones are an issue. There'll be all sorts of issues in getting it done, but it is getting done, so it will be taken care of, and it will just take a little time. The curious fact of the matter is, though, there's every indication that there's very little radioactive blue topaz on the market. I think the government has found this out also. They just don't find it out there. It could happen, of course, but it just, for the most part, isn't there. Of course, there are alternatives. There's things like supposed diffusion-treated topaz and other types of color-coded topaz. It isn't really diffusion-treated, of course. It's a type of coating. But they do have their drawbacks. It's very thin, and it can be chipped off easily. Excuse me. So any kind of scratch or abrasion will cut through it, although other than that, it's pretty durable. This is the stuff that's called diffusion treatment with cobalt. The government regulations used to apply only to items that are radiated at a nuclear reactor. But the law is being extended to include things that are irradiated in a linear accelerator. That's what's used to irradiate most other gemstones, which really kind of opens up a can of worms outside of blue topaz. I mean, just as some examples, this is quartz. If you take citrine like this and irradiate it, you get smoky topaz, smoky quartz. Some amethyst is irradiated. I mean, these guys here, this kind of weird color violet stuff that's just coming on the market. This is produced by heating it and irradiating it. So any number of these can be irradiated, and the ones like smoky, you can't separate it by testing it anyway from stuff that's been irradiated can separate those, but are you going to test every black pearl that comes into the country? Tourmaline, pink to red tourmaline. There's a lot of this that's irradiated, there's a lot of it that's not. We can't separate that either, so is all pink to red tourmaline going to have to be tested for radioactivity now? I mean, there's a lot of these questions. Unfortunately, I have more questions than answers concerning this at the moment. Diamonds, of course, there's lots of irradiated diamonds out there which can be tested, but once again, are they all going to have to be tested for radioactivity? And the other question, this is a more interesting question because you can certainly irradiate blue sapphire to yellow sapphire. The yellow sapphire color is not stable. It will fade. But the only way that you can tell that is if you try to fade it. So put it out in the light and let it sit there. Does it fade or not? But does that mean that the government is going to say, well, any yellow sapphire could be irradiated, so now it's all going to be tested? I don't know the answer to this. And these are just a couple of examples of the many different kinds of gemstones that are exposed to radiation to change their color that could fall under this kind of regulation. So I don't know where it's going to go at this point in time. I certainly hope they will consider all these factors before it just turns into a bureaucratic nightmare. But there's another treatment here in concluding that I wanted to bring up. As we talked about clarity enhancement with the lead glass filled rubies, there's clarity enhancement that, as you more commonly are used to seeing it with things such as emeralds. But I feel compelled to mention it because there's something about this treatment that I think most people still don't realize. That if you do know this, then I applaud you because an awful lot of people don't. And that is that it's not just for emeralds anymore. I mean, it is applied to anything. Anything with a fracture can be filled. And so we see all kinds of gem materials with filled fractures in it that necessarily have to have a disclosure comment attached to it. I mean, you're familiar with the effects that it has on emeralds. You know, this is, you've probably seen this picture before. This is before, it's filled, and this is after. It makes quite a dramatic effect on it. This is a fracture in an emerald that the only part that you can see is this little part here that is not filled. It didn't get completely filled here, and the fracture actually goes way over here on both sides, which you can't see it. But Alexandrite, we see it all the time in Alexandrite. I mean, there's a fracture, a little bit of it right there that's not filled, and the rest of the fracture goes way down here. I find it very difficult to take images of something to show you something that you can't see, but I try in these kind of things. There's another example of tourmaline. Pretty much, if the tourmaline's got a fracture in it, it's filled. We see this all the time. It's very, very common. This fracture is running right along here. There's a little area right there that's not filled, but you know, the treatment works really good on tourmaline, and so we see it all the time. And these are just a couple, you know, that we see garnets and all kinds of things, corundum with clarity enhancements done, and we see all kinds of things with this one. So it's really, you know, I just like to mention it because I want everybody to be aware of it so that when, if they perchance get a report back from the lab with this comment on tourmaline, they're not calling us and saying, what are you talking about clarity enhancement in tourmaline? They don't do that. I get that all the time. So, in conclusion, government regulations of these kinds of issues is inevitable in this stage. You know, when we have political unrest in countries and such, or when we have these treatments, you know, they're going to get involved. I mean, Burma isn't the only country with political unrest that produces gemstones. Like I said, Kenya's exploding at the moment, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. Hopefully they'll stop before long, but who knows? Other treatments could easily fall under their scrutiny, just depending on what it is. You know, there's all sorts of things that are done to stones these days. I mean, the lead glass fill treatment, the question keeps coming up, is this dangerous because it's got lead in it? Well, it's no more dangerous than lead crystal that you used to drink out of. It's the same kind of thing. But the question comes up, and so is somebody going to say, well, then there's some kind of health issue, and so we have to regulate this? It could happen. There are always solutions to these
quickly. We've gone into our lunch time. So we'll be available in the lunchroom. If you have any questions, you can just find us and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending.